EV adoption is stalling in Canada, and I'm going to give you the reasons why we should expect this for northern markets and how every market is uniquely different before electric cars become mainstream. So let's go ahead and kick it off. First, let me just say thank you guys so much. 100,000 subscribers. That's a remarkable accomplishment. Thank you guys so much for all of the support. And again, make sure you subscribe, like this video. It really helps with the algorithm. But let's deep dive into what I'm seeing in the EV market. There's some data and stats that show over 5%, which is the typical adoption in the S-curve that they call it, or any type of new technology to go into the mainstream, is above 5% adoption. Canada went ahead and went above 5%. We can see in the data here in this market snapshot, EV adoption in Q1 went up to share of 5.8% in 2022 Q1, but then dropped in Q2 to 5% in 2022. And so what we're seeing now is the percentage of EVs being sold in the Canadian market as a total percentage dropping. And there's a few factors as to why. I've made previous videos about this, but EVs are great. I love them. Look, we got a hybrid, which isn't the full EV, but there are headwinds out in the market that are stopping people from fully adopting EVs and to go full electric. One of the main ones, and I always talk about this, is range anxiety. Specifically in the North American market and Canada and the Northeastern markets, it is much harder to get the advertised range for these EVs. It is a fact, okay? Whether you own a Tesla, a General Motors vehicle, whatever it is that is full EV, you have gone through this, we've seen it, I've seen it personally in all of my testing. You're gonna get range degradation, 25, 30, even 35% in winter climates. Number one, that's the biggest staller for people looking to adopt full EV, is that range anxiety. Number two, the actual network, the charging network and infrastructure in Canada specifically is extremely poor. Outside of Tesla, where you have the supercharging network, you are dealing with shoddy network across North America and specifically in Canada in reliability of the state of charge. Many manufacturers will claim, look, we can charge your car to 100% or to 80% in 18 minutes, 20 minutes. The reality is the infrastructure needs to allow for that. The temperatures need to allow for that. They don't necessarily advertise that. And in various experiences that I've had and what reviews all say, you are rarely actually going to get to that optimal operating temperature, the optimal scenario to get the optimal charging. So you need to think about that. The other thing that's actually happening now is when you buy an EV, you also need to buy the charging infrastructure for your home. And there's some gaps around that. A lot of people are renting. You may not be able to actually install this charging infrastructure in the home that you're renting. And even if you're not renting, it is an additional investment that you need to go ahead and make to make sure that your car is charged at home. On top of that, we're in this economic climate with much higher interest rates. Interest rates have risen in Canada significantly, over 500 basis points. And what we're seeing now is that it is much more expensive to afford these car payments. The majority of cars, they're bought on financing. Now the fact that interest rates have skyrocketed means going ahead and purchasing that EV for a premium is even much more expensive than before. And so what we're seeing now is the demand for these expensive vehicles beginning to pull back. And what are we seeing? We're starting to see some price cuts for these EVs because that demand is weakening and it's falling. And so consumers are looking at either A, keeping their existing internal combustion engine vehicles, maintaining them for longer, or they're choosing a hybrid option, which is actually the option that we chose, because a lot of these issues that many EV potential buyers were looking at deterred them from going to EV, just like myself, and to pick hybrid, right? Where it's kind of like the best of both worlds. And obviously the cons of both worlds as well, but that was kind of the sacrifice that was being made for a lot of consumers. And we're seeing this in the data. The data is suggesting now consumers are pulling back their spend on EV only options, and they're looking at other options in the market to go ahead for their vehicle. Now, do I think that EV adoption in Canada is gonna stall permanently? No, I think at the end of the day, let's be real here. The future is EV. For people that need to go A to B, it is EV. The point is that you need the infrastructure. You need a whole bunch of other pieces to support that. And I think EV adoption, you can't just put a blanket slate on it worldwide. The fact is batteries operate differently in different temperatures. And when you're up north versus down in California and the south, your experience with EV cars is going to be completely different, right? And look, in Canada, we get winter, a good winter for 4 months out of the year. So about a third of the year, you're in deep, cold kind of winter. And you have to think about that now because the range whether it's claimed at 500 kilometers or 550 kilometers, you can say to yourself, look, I'm gonna get maybe a third of that range cut off in the worst case scenario, right? Then you gotta think about the charging infrastructure and all those other pieces in place. So I think in combination with kind of EV infrastructure, the reality of the geography that you're in, whether you should purchase the EV or not, higher interest rates, the economy coming to a stall, all of these things in combination is seeing a pullback on kind of EV market share. And I think you're gonna see that pullback specifically impact Canada and those other regions where they're facing harsher conditions, where the range of those EVs are being impacted more. And so that's happening to the kind of psychology of the buyer. It definitely impacted me. Look, we just picked up our 2023 Lexus NX350H. I was gung-ho on going on a full EV option. I was looking at the Cadillac Lyriq. I was potentially looking at a Tesla Model 3. And look, after going through the pros and cons, I decided for our specific scenario, living in Ontario, Canada, with all of those things I just talked about, we weighed the options, the pros and cons of going EV versus hybrid, the cost, the range anxiety, all of these other pieces. We decided for ourselves, look, we're actually gonna go with a hybrid right now. We think that makes the most sense, but obviously EV is gonna be the future. The question is, when will EV adoption become mainstream in Canada? And I think until they figure out the charging infrastructure, and I think until we get solid state batteries that are going to extend ranges to potentially 800 to 1,000 kilometers, that's when we'll really see this exponential uptick in EV adoption, in my opinion. But that's just my thoughts. Look, I can share the journey with you and my thought process again in a previous video. I'll do that, but let me hear your thoughts. Are you considering an EV or a hybrid? How are you weighing these pros and cons? I'd love to hear it. You know, do I go back at my decision and say, should I have gone full EV? No. I'm honestly really happy with the hybrid vehicle that we have. This NX350H gets us on average about 6 to 6.5 liters per 100 kilometers. It is amazing in terms of fuel economy. I use regular fuel. It doesn't hit me at the pump like other vehicles I used to have. So I think it's the best of both worlds, but I would love to hear your comments. Leave them down in the comment box down below. Again, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, like this video. Can't believe over 100,000 subscribers. Really cool. And honestly, I'm just so thankful. So thank you all for watching. And curious to hear what you guys think about EVs. And I'm curious to hear for the people that are looking to buy a new car, how are you considering the pros and cons and what decisions are you gonna make? Look, if I was in California, I probably would have gone full EV, but unfortunately I'm in the cold and that's not a reality for me. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will catch you guys in the next one.